I'd like you to meet the original Raven Poetry Circle. They were a scrappy band of poets that sold poems in Washington Square Park throughout the Great Depression. I am so proud to bring some of my favorite writers along for a live streaming reincarnation of this tradition. The Ravens included people like Francis McCrudden, a former telephone repairman, Anka Verbruska, a Hungarian immigrant who went on to work with some of the greatest American poets of the 20th century. And then there's Maxwell Bodenheim. He's the guy in the far right-hand corner there. He was a literary rock star in the 1920s, and his career completely bottomed out and never recovered during the Great Depression. We don't remember any of these people anymore, but there's one single life-changing secret hidden inside of this picture. If you just look at these smiling, goofy people that are staring at us from 80 years ago, can you see their secret? The secret is they were not alone. They were not alone. In the middle of one of those tumultuous times in human history with too many bookstores and too many publishers and too many literary journals closed, they were not alone. And tonight, you are not alone either. We are all here together in this imaginary room that we built out of stories. I've been reading a lot of people from the Great Depression over the last few months. There's no literary map that exists for this territory that we now inhabit, but I keep coming back to these writers who survived the 1930s. Some days I can't even read the news or social media feeds anymore, but as I go deeper into this labyrinth of 80-year-old stories, I just can't imagine what the future is going to look like even a few days into my future, much less 1 year or 10 years from now when my children are grown-ups. But in these books and in the stories and in these pictures of these people smiling at me from so many years ago, I found this fragile and golden thread that guided me through our new darkness. We're going to have to reimagine everything in our own time, and the lives and the stories of these Great Depression writers are a good place to start. So starting tonight, let's follow their stories together. We could go looking for hope and survivors. And I'd like to introduce our first reader. He's Robin Sloan. I've been reading him for many years. And his latest book is Sourdough, and you can find him at robinsloan.com. Robin, I'm going to take my screen down here, and I'm going to give you the microphone, as it were. Hang on. There we go. All right. And,
all right.
Yeah, the floor is yours. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much. You can hear me okay? You can hear me okay, Jason? Okay, good. All right. I'm a Zoom noob. What a great introduction. What a great project. Oh my gosh. What I want to offer to this Ravens Poetry Circle revived or revised or revisited or all three and more is actually not something that I wrote, but something that I read many months ago now and has never left my mind ever since. This was written before the coronavirus, before pandemic, but you'll see this is perfect for the sort of subject of this piece. It was prophetic in a very useful way. So this is a blog post. It's nothing schmancy. It's not in a literary journal or a big magazine, but it was posted on the blog of M. John Harrison, who's one of my favorite writers. He's a great writer of science fiction, really literary science fiction. And if there's anyone out there who hasn't read his trilogy of books, beginning with the novel Light, L-I-G-H-T, then you've got to go read it. It's phenomenal. Truly one of the emerging classics of the 21st century. So M. John Harrison, who lives in the UK, posted this post with the title, The Rant, and it begins with sort of a picture of him actually delivering this, to a crowd of people. This was a protest that was all about climate, a gathering that was all about kind of the climate crisis. But I think it speaks to our moment too. So it's a short post and I'm going to read it to you now. Science fiction writers often used to be called Cassandras, after the prophet whose predictions weren't believed until they came true. So this, if it needed a title, would be entitled Cassandra's Memo to Herself After Laying Out the Cards. It's easier to warn about a disaster that hasn't happened yet than to write about one that's happening all around you. When you fancied yourself as a misfortune teller all your life, and now the voices echoing back off the temple walls are repeating with great clarity the words you never really wanted to believe because they were in the end just too much of a disaster, what do you say next? When the disaster gets too intimate with you, when it's crawled up too close like the prophetic snake curled up and licking in the mouth, the snake licking to be admitted and at the same time to be transmitted to be acknowledged and released, what are you going to find to say? Cassandra is in need of new omens and new ways of managing them. Or is she? Omens aren't much use when the ominous hasn't just come about, but is free, clear, and acting out in real life. How meaningless to spread the cards and invoke future number 16, the fall of the tower, when the tower has already fallen down on top of you. Specifically, what use is a prophet now that the future has caught up with the past and the present has caught up with the future? The whole point of prophecy collapses as soon as the prophecy comes true. So, what do you do next? Cassandra doesn't know, except events this overbearing leave you with the growing sense that unless you foreground them, you have no position to speak and no business speaking. Try to understand the science. Try to tell the truth. Try to find a medium in which to tell the truth. Try to extend the envelope in which you will be permitted to tell the truth. Prophecy is over. Persuasion is over. Action is the last thing left. Rebellion is the last thing left. Stay steady in the face of it all. Do what you can. Write that. Record that. And finally, try to pass helpful messages between practical, determined people. And that's the end of the post. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. It was really good to have you. And would you just say the name of the author one more time?
Yes,
and
absolutely. All
yeah.
credit. All credit to, so the author of that post, which is titled The Rant and was delivered, sort of aloud in October 2019, is M. John Harrison. And if you Google M. John Harrison blog, The Rant, it will pop right up along with all the rest of his posts and his writing and links to everything else. So M. John Harrison, I salute you.
Right. We're moving at quite a clip, actually. We're moving much faster than I have anticipated. Does anyone, we do have a nice group of people here. Does anyone have anything, any questions or thoughts they wanted to say? We do have a couple minutes here to kind of keep moving, but feel free to say hello.
Well, I want to say hi. It's great to see you all. What a nice idea, Jason.
Yeah. It's so good to see all these faces I haven't seen in so long. Marc, especially. It's been many, many years since I saw you. Welcome.
Thanks. Did we do introductions like where people are from?
No, we haven't actually. But since we do have, there's no one in the waiting room right now, we might as well just say hello. So I'm Jason. I'm in Los Angeles right now. I was in New York for many years. That's where I met Marc. And yeah, Robin, do you want to say where you are?
Yeah, I'm up here in the San Francisco Bay Area. The sun is still shining. It's 5 p.m. and I'm over in Oakland, where right down by the railroad tracks, where a train derailed just a couple of hours ago. Not a passenger train, and no damage or destruction, but still it felt sort of strange and eerie.
Yikes. Yeah, and Deborah, do you want to say hello too? It's been many years since I've seen you also. It's good to see you.
Hi Jason, how are you?
Good.
We actually moved out of Brooklyn a year and a half ago, and now we're in Connecticut, near New Haven.
All right, well, welcome.
Yeah.
So good to have you. And then Marc?
Well, hello everybody. Robin, I don't think we've met, but I remember your novel, at least the one. And good to meet everybody. I am still in Brooklyn, which is, people who aren't here think it's like scary, but actually we're holding together very well. And yeah, doing a lot of Zoom meetings, but this is a nice one.
Good. Well, thank you and welcome. So good to see you.
Yeah.
And then Ernesto, it's been many years. It's been a few months since I've seen you, but I was really glad you could join us. Oh, you're muted.
Got it. All right.
There
You
you
guys hear
go.
me?
Yeah, welcome.
Hey guys, my name is Ernesto. It's a pleasure to be here. This is the first time I've ever really done anything like this. My my universe has always been the teaching universe, and now I'm reconnecting back again to writing and doing and poetry and things like this. So reconnecting with the arts. So this is pretty cool. Thank you for inviting me, Jason.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And then are you Skyping with or doing Zoom with your students? I'm in Los Angeles, and my daughter's doing it with her teachers.
Yes, that's really surreal. It's a lot different. I'm adjusting to it, but yeah, we're connecting, and it's been interesting. Definitely.
Well, welcome, and he'll tell us a little bit more about his novel, which is out right now too. And Susie DeFord, it's good to see you too. Can you hear us, Susie?
Yes. Hi.
Yeah, it's been many years.
Yeah.
Susie was there in Washington Square Park many years ago. We all did this. That was the last time this all happened. So welcome, Susie, and say hello.
Hi. I'm coming to you from Catskill, New York. Moved out of Brooklyn 5 years ago. Live in the Hudson Valley Catskill region, but often come back. I'm really happy to see all of you and to be included in this great reading. So thanks for having me.
All right. And finally, James Renner is here as well. I see him over here. James, can you hear us? You want to say hello too? Yeah. Oh.
Hey, there we go. Can you hear
me?
James?
Yeah, you sound great. Hey, good to hear you.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm live from Akron, Ohio, or as we call it here, AK Rowdy. And we were one of the first states to be completely locked down. So we're good. We're just hanging out. My kids are doing Zoom school. My wife has this conspiracy theory that this virus was started by the people that created Zoom, because nobody talked about Zoom before this quarantine. Like it wasn't a big thing, and now it's how we survive. So but yes, thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, welcome. And I just want to tell everybody, we do have a very cozy room of people right here, right now, but we will be posting, I am recording this, and we will share this video far and wide so more people can listen to the reading too. But thank you so much for joining us today. Now we're right back on schedule. So we're going to move on here to the next reader is Debora Kuan. She's going to read some new poems. She's a poet living in Connecticut. She's author of the books Lunch Portraits and Xing. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to mute myself, and welcome, Debora.
Thanks, Jason. I'm still muted. Sorry, I was going to say that I'm just going to read one or two poems because I have a 4-year-old and she's liable to barge in at any moment. So I'm just going to make this a little quick. But thank you so much, Jason, for inviting me and allowing me to participate. This is a poem I wrote called The Drugstore at 8 a.m. I wrote it before the whole coronavirus madness began, and it sort of has a new sheen now that workers at drugstores and grocery stores are sort of heroes against their will. But it's called The Drugstore at 8 a.m. The drugstore at 8 a.m. has a sanctity about it that reminds me of a Dutch Baroque painting. A bonneted young woman pouring milk out of a gleaming pitcher. Here the gnats greet the immaculate peaks of morning. Here the blue-lit screen responds to the heat of a fingerprint.
There it is.
I'm not seeking. I wake early to peer down the tenantless rows of raisins, painkillers, toilet paper, and miniature jars of ice cream-colored nail polish lit from within, to see the pharmacist raised half a flight up, doling out advice to a stranger, to feel the frankness of giving. And then I'll read a second poem, my last poem. This poem's called Dairyland, and it's an ekphrastic poem that's based off a Joel Meyerowitz photograph that he took in Provincetown. Dairyland. A young girl on a steed rides up to the mint Dairyland windows to purchase 2 lobster rolls and an order of fries the year I am born. Her mother waits nearby in a sweltering car, door ajar, scratching sand off the backs of her ankles. This is the tip of the peninsula. Quorums of seagulls gather, divide, debate, explode as they await their next free meal. I am not by this sea or any other. It is the July before I exist, still a soundless lack that looms incandescent and planetary, my breath a small leopard caged. Soon I will be walled in a niku, my hip bones jutting, my formula cry savage, then clear, unaware of my mother's watchful eye beyond the crisscrossed glass. Home will be weeks away, the brass bars of my grandmother's bed jingling a waking gold music, my brand new sister whispering, nay, nay, in my ear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really good to hear your voice again, and please get back to your daughter, and thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
It was really nice. Thank you. We are running just a little ahead, so I was going to I'll show you right here. I have back during my time in New York, I stopped at the New York Historical Museum, I think is where it was, or it was either there or the New York Public Library, but they have, during the Great Depression, the Ravens, the people who were following, they published their own kind of self-published collection of poetry every month or so. And they called it the Raven Anthology, and you can find them. I'm pretty sure it's actually the New York Public Library, but I photocopied hundreds of pages out of there just to have it, and it's really special, and I'm really glad that I have it. And so I wanted to just read 1 or 2 of their poems, since we have a little bit of time here to between readers. The first one, this is from Francis McCrudden, who was the telephone operator who founded the group and started this whole thing. And he calls it, "With Apologies to a Forgotten Villager." He says, "The old saw has it, riches prove the man, but the real test is poverty, by damn. Am I aware that the rhyme is false? I am, but even so, it tell the truth, by damn." And that was him. And actually, I can show you Mr. McCrudden himself in this photo. He is the guy in the white hat there. And he always is there in all the old photos. And this is the Ravens as they would be at the corner in Washington Square Park selling their poems. They would just tack them right up on the walls like that. And there you can see Francis kind of sitting beside 2 of the women there. And I'm gonna just pull one more poem here, and then we will move on. And
Jason, it's my very humble suggestion that for the next edition of this Zoom meeting, you should find and wear a hat like that.
How hard could that be? Yeah, yeah, he's funny. And then all right, here it is. This is Anka Verberska. She I have been working for many years on a book about writers during the Great Depression, and I wrote one chapter about her. People don't really remember her very much anymore, but she was in a relationship with the poet May Swenson, who is one of our greatest 20th century poets. and she was her verse was amazing. But their friendship began during the Great Depression, and you can actually see there's an actual written record of the first time they met, and it's really incredible to see these two minds connecting. But Enka, even though we don't really remember her poetry anymore, she did work with some of the greatest poets of the 20th century. She worked as an editor for many years and as a teacher. And this is a poem she wrote. This would have been probably like 1934. As a young woman, she said, "Skyscrapers. Giant question marks are the skyscrapers. In dumb amazement, they stare at the sky as if trying to guess the reason why puny men should build so high. Devised by the human brain from the womb of monstrous machines, they came to stand statue like their foolish aim. I think of the Tower of Babel, of pyramids, while viewing these creatures of mass production. The one confused the human speech, the other resulted in Egypt's destruction. Now they are both symbolic of human folly, ancient shame, a memento that masters fail to heed. They always built so high, but not enough deep. A symbol of achievement, the skyscrapers? No. Tombstones that foreshadow the annihilation of this soulless, decaying, mechanized civilization." And that kind of summarizes why I like these people so much. I mean, there's a bit of, there's a lot of verse in there, but there's also, it has kind of the coffee house rage and energy that I remember so well from my days doing readings in New York City. And it just makes me so happy to read them across all of these centuries. And I'm glad that I just hope we all remember them and carry their name forward another generation. All right. I'm going to move ahead here to, all right. So now I'd like to introduce Marc Eliot Stein. He's going to read a poem. He was once known as the literary blogger Levi Asher. He's currently director of technology for World Beyond War, a nonprofit, and he continues to run Literary Kicks as well as a couple of podcasts. He lives in Brooklyn. I'm going to mute myself, and Marc, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, everybody. So I decided to try to write a poem for this occasion based on what I remember of the Raven Poetry Circle and also how I'm feeling today. And I also, just for a challenge, I decided to try to sort of write it in first person plural. So that's something new. Felt good for the situation we're in. So it's called Baby Kangaroo. Oh, my friends, how did we get here today? To think how hard we tried, every step of the way. In the end, when it suddenly broke and crashed, it wasn't the danger spots we thought we saw. How ludicrous now to think about the past. How ludicrous to meet our fatal flaw. I bought a jigsaw puzzle with 500 pieces. The puzzle kicked my ass. The only candles I could find were Mary and Jesus. Well, I did not come to New York City for a funeral. Here we are, staying alive, going for walks. One society, together. I found out through a fence that the zoo in Prospect Park has a peacock. Well, to me, New York City was always just halfway to Woodstock. I do not miss the city. I do not miss the town. Everywhere I go, deep down inside, I'm Brooklyn bound, and Queens. So sure, I am all right. I am okay. When you're in quarantine, every day is opposite day. But all my friends, all my world, I think we are some kind of animal together, and I want to find out what animal we are. In the last few years, sometimes I thought we were sheep. Today, I'm feeling more positive than that. I'm looking for change. I'm not looking for blame. It's long ago I got way over being ashamed for America. It'll be a long time now before I get Italian ices. And I had this revelation that a jigsaw puzzle is just a manufactured crisis. So what did we learn from the last few years and from today? Here's one thing we learned that we don't need. One big thing we don't need. Here's the biggest thing of all that we learned we don't need. Money. Money. That was a big lie. That dream was a waste. So what have we learned? What together will we do? I think what animal we're most like is a baby kangaroo. But let's go on. Our hearts are wide open. And here we are. And we really fucked up this time. And now we're going to hope to get a chance to try again. But this, what we did up to now, this was really wrong. Thanks.
That was wonderful. I think that's the strangest thing about Zoom is there is no applause. You can't, there's no way to show appreciation. That was really wonderful. Thank you.
I saw some people snapping, and it's just great to hear people, to be able to read that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I would like, if you don't mind, Marc, since we did meet over literary blogs for so many years, what are you reading right now, if anything? I'd love to hear any.
Well, so since coming, I spent 6 years in Virginia, and it was very hard for me to be away from New York. I am one of these who loves New York. So when I came back to New York about 5 years ago, I got aggressively into opera. And I actually have gone to about 50 operas at the Met and started an opera podcast. The funny thing is I didn't know a thing about opera before. So I'm reading books about opera. I'm reading really about 5 different books about opera. It's just kind of something new, you know? So that's what I'm reading. I'm also reading some, my friend Vanessa Veselka, the novelist, who some of you may know, has a galley out, which is amazing. I think, you know, she's, well, if, you know, maybe I'll invite her to a later version of this. I think she would fit in well here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I do want to encourage anyone, I am scheduling another one from almost a month from now. I would be happy to do it again if we can get another lineup. So please encourage other people and keep in touch if you want to do it again, because this is really, I think this is really special, and I will share the reading with other people too. So thank you. I also want to welcome Cory is here. Cory, can you hear us? If you want, everyone had a moment to kind of introduce themselves earlier at the beginning of this, and if you want to just say hello, you can, and welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Cory.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm a friend of Susie's. Susie told me about this.
Yeah, welcome. And everyone's here, and it is a very cozy small room right now, but we will be sharing this video far and wide after it's over. So welcome.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah. And do you want to tell everyone where you are and what?
I'm in Kingston, New York. That's about 2 hours north of the city.
Okay.
I'm a fairly recent transplant.
Well, welcome. And let's, yeah, so maybe we're just a little ahead of schedule. So I'm going to pull up one more Raven Poetry anthology thing, and then we'll bring up
Jason, I have a question for you.
yes, please.
I'm not sure I'm confusing my platforms because I've been doing Canvas and Meets and this software. Does this software have the ability for you to turn on the captions?
So I will be able to, let me see, actually, let me check. I don't think Zoom has that live, but if they do, I will turn it on, and I can caption. I do know how to caption after the fact. I have learned that.
I just love seeing.
I think this is something Google does that Zoom is trying to do, but they don't have it quite yet. That's what I think.
Okay. It might be Google Meets, yes.
Yeah. But I do, and I have learned it's a couple steps, but I have learned it in my career about how to handle the captions. So I will. It takes a little bit of work, but yeah, Google has a pretty good machine captioning, and then I just have to go through and kind of update everything. So I will try to caption everything. I do think that's very important. So thank you for Thank you for mentioning that. Pull up one more poem. I guess I'm going to go back to I think she's my favorite of the Ravens, Anka Verburska, one more time. And this is the first poem that the Ravens ever published in their very first Raven anthology. This was December 1933. You can actually see it right there. It says issued monthly or thereabouts. And I was very happy to do this. You could subscribe for $1 a year back then. And this is called Autumn Wind. Autumn wind, strong-armed, invisible elemental lover, embracing gently the trees. Swaying branches shrink away in terror. Timid leaves protest with a frightened rustling. Deadly are the kisses of this dangerous lover. They soon realize how futile the struggle, bow graciously as if pleading for pity. Careless wind, whistling and shouting, wild melodies clasp them in a firmer embrace, stifles their sighing complaint. With wanton playfulness shakes and breaks even the sturdiest oaks. One by one, slowly, softly, supreme sacrifice. The crimson leaves are falling, stripped of foliage. The trees stand humbled, confused and ashamed of nudity. At last, overwhelmed by the constant onslaught of fierce caresses, they abandon themselves to cruel, destructive love of the wind. And the cool kisses and weird melodies, it lulls them into lethargic sleep. That was Anka Verburska from the Raven Poetry Circle, the original one. And I would like to welcome our newest, the Susie DeFord will be coming up here. 1 second. Susie will read 2 poems. She's the author of the poetry collection Dogs of Brooklyn. She lives in Catskill, New York. But yeah, like Marc, she was there back almost 10 years ago now, I think, when we were in Washington Square Park celebrating the Ravens back then. So here she is. Welcome, Susie.
Thanks, Jason. I think I'm going to read 3 short poems, and they've all been written fairly recently. I wrote one probably about 6 months ago, this first one that I'm reading on one of my trips back to the city from upstate New York. So it's called Long Distance. Wiry people spring and ricochet off the subway walls, an obstacle course through a rat's maze. The race is well in session, but I'm strolling, eating overpriced donuts, licking icing off my thumb. Relationships change with space. It's been 4 years since we broke up, New York, but sometimes I feel like I'm falling back in love. I just don't think I want to live with you anymore. You're too much of a noisy sleeper, sirens snoring all night long. You're too possessive, traffic chokes to even try to get away from you for a few blessed hours. You made me crazy, literally spun out from all your spinning, but you still feel like home. Maybe we can get back together, but still live apart. 2.5 hours, 100 miles north, green as far as the eye can see, where I can leave the car unlocked in the driveway, the thruway whistling in the distance, calling me home. So this next one, I wrote sort of at the beginning of the, isolation period that we're all dealing with right now. It's called Illuminate. The sun shines even in disaster. Buildings splinter and fall, our breathing isolation, my summer of despair, yet sunlight is still coming through the windows. Shadows pattern on the floor. Outside's green buds burst. Soon leaves and crocus, yellow and violet the spring. You're battling vines, cutting and piling in the fields, planting plantings of trees. The dogwood will go here, the red maple there, reclaiming the quarry. Nature has a way of restoring itself. Despite our best efforts to cut it back, it keeps growing, growling and howling in the night. The birds and frogs sing and beep, under stars illuminate. What was before shall go after. So that's just a slice of upstate life, a little bit different than the New York poem. So this is the last one I'll read that I actually wrote this morning. So this is the buds outweigh the clouds. It's snowing, mid-April, white on green. The dog is reluctant, a bit of a queen. I'm peeling apples over the sink into a bowl, scraps for the deer outside in the meadow. Each waxy neon sliver removed reveals the flesh. I cut out the bruise and mix with sugar. Force the flour with the lard, roll it out flatter and flatter, pie in the pan, oven hot, fans spinning, smoking alarms. These quiet moments alive while they're out there fighting, stay home from sickness, forced witness to this mess. The politicians pomp and preen. It's not about this. Now is not the time for posture. I slump into the couch, drink coffee and stare at the mountains while the machine clicks and clicks on. The timer buzzes in the kitchen. The pie is hot and done. Wait for it to cool and wait for sun. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, and Susie, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, I mean, you wrote that this morning. How do you find time? How do you find time and I guess the energy to write in this time? I know a lot of people are struggling with that. I'd love to hear if you have any.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. I have been struggling to write for the past 5 years since I left the city, and this time of forced isolation, and I can't, work right now with my business. So it's sort of bringing me back to writing and prioritizing that, and, just sort of being forced to sit with myself and not get caught up in other things and make excuses, and to actually just sit and write. And that's, some days are good, some days I can do it, and some days I just don't get anything done. So I'm just kind of accepting it right now that that's how it's going to be.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to share with us today, and I'm glad you're writing again. That's great. Thank you. The one really wacky thing about the Raven Poetry Circle is in about 1934, they became embroiled in this sort of international scandal. One of their members ran away with another one of their members, and it became national headlines. And it's one of my favorite stories, and I write about it in the book. I've written about it before. It's just it's a wacky story. Everything turns out fine, and everybody's happy in the end. It's got a happy ending, but the girl who disappeared, she was an 18-year-old. Her name was Louise Christ, and she was in love with one of the other poets, and they ran away together and got chased all over the country. And it's a wacky story, but I wanted to share one of her poems because it sticks out so. It's so different than anything else in there, and I think it had to do with the fact that she was an 18-year-old running around with these people who were older and liked a lot of the verse. And this is called "The Fatalist" by Louise Christ. A cat yawned sleepily upon a windowsill and drank the liquid amber of the moon. A star observed the gleam of whiteness through the glass and smiled mysteriously to the cat. She held a shadow mass in check, and to the cat she said, "These are your lives, and I am fate." They pulled with fiendish joy until they broke the leash and fled in 9 directions through the sky. The cat stretched out his paws along the windowsill with nonchalance and purred himself to sleep. That was Louise Christ and her poem about escape and dreams of escape in this period of the last time our country was in a really dark and perilous place. And I think a lot about the young people now and what world they're going into. My own children, all of our children. It's really scary. I'm going to pull up the next. I'd like to introduce James Renner, who, let me just, all right. James Renner is, he's going to read from his novel in progress, Violet Eyes, which I am very excited to hear a little bit more of. He's the author of several books, including the novel The Man from Primrose Lane and the true crime memoir, True Crime Addict. I think both of them make excellent quarantine reading if you are looking for something. And welcome, James. James,
on.
okay, we missed you for a
Hold on.
second, James. There you go.
Thank you very much. Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Am I
Yep.
good? Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for having me on. Yes, this is the chapter 1 of the of an unpublished novel called Violet Eyes that we're shopping around right now. So knock on wood. I am blown away by the talent I'm hearing today, and I wish I could write poetry, but this is prose. We're going to do some prose here, so we're switching over. This is a new beast. Chapter 1 from Violet Eyes. The rain came, and I was lost in it for a time. A deafening roar, a old and I no umbrella, no coat. There was no advanced sprinkle, no tiny silver liquid drops.
Hey, James, can you hold on for 1 second?
The
You're
cacophony
kind
was
of breaking up,
terrifying.
James. You're breaking up a little bit here.
I am.
I'm going to try something. I try this on my other Zoom meetings that I do. I'm just going to put everybody's videos down for this time. Sometimes that lowers the load on your internet and it makes it easier for your audio to come through. I'm just going to do that. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm just turning off your video for a couple minutes just to see if maybe that will help. And because
they're winking out of existence one by one.
Here I go. Oops, that's not. There we go. Oh, I can't even get my own video here.
Well, you should stay in so he has somebody to.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's try that. See if this works, James.
Okay. Chapter 1, Violet Eyes. The rain came and I was lost in it for a time. A deafening roar, a gray weighted curtain. Old Testament flood rain, like waking in a river drowning. And I was unprepared, no umbrella, no coat. There was no advanced sprinkle, no tiny silver liquid drops. The sky opened, water fell, and the universe disappeared around me, and the cacophony was terrifying. I felt the danger of it. How, with an indifferent nudge, this moment might tip towards some new catastrophe. How we doing? How we doing, Jason? All right. I had just come out of Olin Hall, where I'd met with my academic advisor for the first time. I'd worn my gray hoodie, the one with the frayed sleeves, and that was 5 years old, and said New England Conservatory of Music across the front. I felt confident inside my hoodie. The weight of it pleased me. I pulled the hood tight over my head, useless. I felt the moment where my clothes could accept no more rain, when each single thread absorbed as much as it could and gave up. With every breath, I inhaled the mist of the rainstorm, and it was like trying to pull air through a quilt wrapped around your face when the monsters were coming in the night, and you didn't dare breathe to draw them near. I started to panic. I turned back, hoping to retreat into the English building, but I couldn't find it. The rain was so powerful I could see only a foot in front of me. I'd lost the sidewalk at some point. I saw that I was standing on grass on some landscape triangle you maybe weren't supposed to walk on when everything was dry. I considered my car, but I parked it across campus in the deck by the police department because I didn't have a permit. Too far away, and besides, I didn't even know which direction I was facing. I shuffled forward half steps, arms out, fingers reaching through the rain. There were buildings all around me if I could just find them. I was on the north end of the University of Akron, not far from Bierce Library and the Jar, the James A. Rhodes Arena, where I planned to run in the winter, get back in shape. There was shelter in every direction if I kept moving forward. I had to stay calm. My shoes scratched over pavement. A parking lot? No. A street. I was crossing a double yellow line. Shit. If a car came over the hill, there'd be no time to brake. A light would shine out a second before impact, and I would be crushed, drawn under wet tires, my guts squeezed out of my mouth like a frog you hadn't meant to step on. I walked faster, found a sidewalk on the other side, heaved up by Ohio frost. The sidewalk brought me to a wrought iron fence, ancient, rusted. I grabbed it, sturdied myself, and then followed it along hand over hand. Soon I came to an open gate and a cobblestone drive. A tall house solidified out of the mist, pulling itself into the tangible, as if it were made of the rain. A brick mansion, 3 stories high, with wide gingerbread cornices, and a widow's walk up on top. All along the facade were tall, narrow windows with half curtains like droopy-lidded eyes staring back at me. And if the windows were eyes, there was a dark pupil in the eyeball to the left of the front door. It was a man, or the shadow of a man. He stood behind the ancient warped pane, looking out in awe at the rainstorm. A plump old man and well-dressed. As I watched, he shifted and noticed me. I startled him. I must have looked vaguely haunting, standing in the deluge, soaking through in my drab clothes like some apparition. But then he collected himself and he waved excitedly and motioned to the front door. I dashed up the sandstone steps of the wraparound porch and nearly collapsed when the weight of the rain slagged off. As I passed below the overhang, I stumbled forward against a screen door. I looked up. The old man was standing on the other side. His face was round, and he had great crow's feet from smiling too much. I was struck by his kind face and knew this was a friend, and I was safe here, and all would be fine. And that is how I met Jeffrey Corcoran and how I came to be at Humboldt House. But in that house, we were never safe, not for a minute. Now, I'm going to describe the house a bit, what little of it I saw that day, and it's going to sound like I know more than I'm talking about, which isn't true. That morning, I didn't know a Turkish armoire from an IKEA cabinet, but I imagine you at least scanned the jacket of this book already, and so you know I spent a great deal of time at Humboldt House. Long enough to study each artifact and room, and in fact, it was my job for a time to do that. I guess what's important to remember is that at this moment in the narrative, I didn't know what I was looking at, but for the purposes of setting a scene, I'll borrow that information from a little later. Sound fair? I want to be honest with you from the beginning. I came into a tight foyer through a tall, open door that had a fancy double H etched into the window. That double H, picture an H with a littler H inside, sharing the same connecting bridge. That was the logo that Henry Humboldt used in all his business and trade. And Henry Humboldt is the first person a visitor sees. His portrait, drawn by Italian artist Frank Ciappa, hangs on the wall outside the door. He looks rather serious and stern, but everybody did back then. Wide eyebrows, narrow eyes, pursed mouth like he had tasted something bitter, the pith, the dandelion green. Thank you, thank you, thank you, I said, nearly breathless. I looked down to see the Scottish wool carpet turning all dark around my keds. I'm getting everything wet. The old man seemed unconcerned. Come with me, he said. We stepped into the east parlor then, where I'd spotted Mr. Corcoran through the window. The room was octagonal, and the walls were covered in paper stenciled with acanthus leaves in a damask pattern, black walnut trim all around. There was an oriental table in the corner, and on top of it was a pair of brass urns with elephant head handles. Beside this was an original Eastlake settee. A vase of fresh periwinkle blue hydrangeas sat atop a rosewood table on the other side. But the focal point of the room was a Turkish armoire with the mother of pearl inlay and it looked like the sort of thing you'd want to climb into to find out if Narnia was on the inside. The floor here was an oak parquet, and the stain got darker as water trickled off my body. I'm sorry, I murmured. Forget about it. These floors have seen worse. I'll fetch some towels. The old man started to walk away, but then he stopped and turned and regarded me for a moment. I'm Jeffrey Corcoran, he said. That's Jeffrey with a G. His voice was soft. Everything about him was soft. He wore a thick flannel shirt one size too large and gray sweatpants and no shoes. And that's when he finally noticed my eyes. Everyone has a different reaction. It's how I judge you. My own little Rorschach test. I'm all about the eyes, all my life. Before the accident even, some people smile, some people cringe. Mr. Corcoran gasped. There was something delightfully earnest about it, the way he didn't mask it, and it was the moment I decided I liked him very much. Your eyes, he said. They're purple. Violet, really, I said. Are they contacts? No. I thought Elizabeth Taylor was the only woman who ever had violet eyes, Mr. Corcoran said. His smile was large and unabashed and just great. And that one, he said, motioning to my left eye with one curled knuckle. It's lighter than the other one, isn't it? That one's not real. He almost asked how it happened. He opened his mouth, and I knew that he was about to ask that forbidden question. I knew because that was the natural order of things, but then he didn't. The towels, he said, and then he walked away. And that's the beginning of a story called Violet Eyes.
Well, thank you, James.
Thank you.
It was great to have you here, and it's really cool to hear a work in progress, and good luck with the manuscript. How are you finding time to write these days?
Actually, we're in a pretty good routine. I have two kids. They both do school online, and my wife is a high school teacher, so she also does school online. So I do my writing during the morning, and then we have afternoon activities. We go out and do something, and then we all congregate back in the evening and have a little dinner and do work.
Wow.
You know, this quarantine has been a boon to my writing, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, thank you once again, and it's really good to have you. And it was great to have some prose. You actually, we've got a little more prose coming up, so this will be good.
Okay.
Welcome. And everyone is free to turn their video back on now. I feel this awesome power of being able to turn people's cameras on and off, but I won't turn your cameras back on without your permission. I feel sort of guilty about that. But Cory, are you, I don't see you yet. I'm gonna unmute you. Cory, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm gonna put your video back on too. I just didn't want to. 1 second. There we go. Oh, that's cool. I actually can't start it without your permission. So there you go. You're back.
Okay. Okay.
There. Great. Welcome. I'll introduce Cory's going to read some poems. She's a poet, astrologer, and somatic therapist. She's working on her first chapbook. And welcome, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is great. Let's see. I'm going to read some old poems because I actually have not been writing new stuff lately. I've been finding it very difficult. I guess I'll do my first poem about Brooklyn. About Brooklyn and dating a writer in Brooklyn. I think we may have all done that at some point. This is called Christopher's Bicoastal Spectacles. So, you went and wrote a book of fairy tales. I remember when that book was just a blog and that blog was just a bin for all the ways you were unhappy. clever reworkings of Rapunzel and Goldilocks, designed to help you untangle your wish lists from your wisdom. Silver lining solipsism to make you feel better about being blue. And we both know how much you adore being blue. Almost as much as you adore those rose-hued lenses smeared with Vaseline, the ones that cut the glare of the winter sun that never stops smiling for the cameras in California. While sleeping, you would toss towards the west exit of our Cobble Hill love nest and project a white laser that raised the rooftops of judgmental brownstones and scorched the playground where that kid punked you for $5. You'd project a creamy CinemaScope concoction 3,000 miles away onto a docile desert canvas that accepts your fantasy and deposits your despondence down her open throat. You'd thrash to the east and body slam the exposed brick wall of our overpriced crash pad, bursting the holy bubble of melancholy that protects you from the boogeyman underneath the bed. I haven't read your book yet. I wonder if you dragged your belly through the dust bunnies, armed with a flashlight and magnifying glass. That's that one. I'll read. So one of my favorite recording artists just dropped her new album today, Fiona Apple. And I think she's like a highly underrated, total freak of a genius of a musician. And I think I wrote this Fiona Apple poem when her last album came out. And so I pulled this one out. It's called The Truth About Apples. Oh, Fiona, I can only take you out after everyone has left the party. You are far too offensive for polite company, and I don't mean in the Courtney Love kind of way. You see, when you bleat, I just want to feel everything. Well, most people don't. Most people don't want their spinal cords tapped by desperate fingers so eager to jangle nerves. It's a party, Fiona. I won't spike the drinks with your bitter truth serum, and no one needs to take a bite out of your smart fruit to know that all Eve ever gave Adam was a core. She left him wanting more food, more knowing, more of all of the sweet and juicy fare one comes to expect from a garden party. Perhaps your serpent will swallow her own tail before she spills her luscious guts into the hungry ears of polite company. It's a party, Fiona. All tables turn, therefore you'll get yours on a night that's right for picking fights and poking fun at all the dum-dums. Until then, into the blood-soaked sleeve you go, filed somewhere between bliss and ignorance. And then I'll just do one more. It's a short one because I miss bars. And I even miss juice bars. And this is, I think it's a little bit about, I'm not sure, I'll just read it. It's called Keeping Clean. The dive bar on the corner got swapped out for another bougie juice bar. Purveyors of exotic fruits and tinctures sure to keep you pure as the driven scene. Another inked forearm forages for some green to plunk down on some nectar of the gods-like concoction, slung by some uniformed flunky. These well drinks, no substitute for simple elixirs and the dirty wisdom of dustbins in the alley, the livers of the city. Yet a filter is only as good as its fodder, and as far as liquids go, couldn't a whole grain spirit keep you cleaner than water from a broken coconut? Couldn't a hot chest and fuzzy head be symptoms of time well spent in a top shelf confessional? Getting rid of sins, imbibing to purge, staying real so we don't go sterile. That's it.
Thank you so much. It's really
Thank you.
good to have you. Now, what So I just started the Peony Apple album, actually. So I'm only about 2 or 3 songs deep. What's the best song to listen to at this moment in time?
I haven't heard it yet. I'm
Oh,
like
no.
waiting for this special moment where I'm just going to like sit and listen and not like do something while I'm listening. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for coming. It's great to have you.
Thanks.
So once again, I do want to tell everyone, please extend the invitation for other writers to join. I mean, you're welcome to come back too. I do want to do this again in May. And we're using the same sign-up sheet and everything for that. So please reach out, because I really enjoyed this. This felt really good to me for a lot of different reasons. And I hope everyone else does it. The next one would be Sunday, May 17th was the date that I put the sign-up sheet for, but please encourage other people to do it. And I just love the mix we've had today of poetry, prose, blog posts, everything. It's been really great. So thank you for stopping by. But I do want to introduce, there's 2 more readers, I think, but maybe Ernesto might be the only other reader we have. I haven't heard from the final reader. So, but I'm very proud to have Ernesto Cisneros. He's going to read some of his writings. He's a teacher here in California. He's the author of Efrén Divided. I read it. I really enjoyed it, and I recommend sharing it with more people. I think it's a really important story at this moment in time. He was born and raised in Santa Ana, California, where he still teaches. And yeah, so welcome, Ernesto.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, I've been really impressed with everything I've been hearing so far. So I feel a little out of place reading middle grade, but it's cool. I've got 2 spots and I haven't even decided which one I want to start with. Do you guys want the beginning first chapter or something a little different?
Let's start at the beginning. At the beginning, but do give a little background on the book. I think it's worth it.
Yeah. So this is a story. It's a middle grade story. It's about a boy named Efrén Nava, and it's pretty much a story about what's going on right now, or especially right after the elections. This is when I started writing it. I had a couple of kids in my classroom that were deported, had the parents that were being deported, and so I got to see the effects of what they were experiencing, and I just felt the obligation to do something about it. So this is the product of it. It's a story about a 12-year-old boy whose mom is deported, leaving him to fend for himself and for his little brother and sister, and hopes that his mom's going to be returning. So yeah, that's the premise. All right, so I'm going to get started in chapter 1 then. All right, here we go. And I apologize if I mess up. I've got a collection of glasses here on me, and none of them are the ones that I need. I have some for computer, I have some for the reading, and some for walking, and it's just getting out of control here. All right, so here we go. Chapter 1. Once again, Efrén Nava woke up to a chubby pajamaed foot in his face. He squinted at the bright yellow rays peeking in through the broken window blinds and looked to his left, but it wasn't Mia's foot. She was fast asleep, cuddled at the edge of the mattress with the same naked plush doll whose clothes she'd taken off and lost a long time ago. He looked to his right. Sure enough, the foot belonged to Max. How Max managed to roll over Efrén during the middle of the night was beyond him. Efrén shook his head and sighed. But then he caught sight of a tiny hole in the right foot of his little brother's flannel onesie. Smiling, Efrén licked the tip of his pinky and gave a wet willy to Maxie's pudgy toe. Efrén covered his mouth and stifled his laughter as a sleeping Max pulled away his leg. However, the victory didn't last. Max spun around in his sleep and planted his other foot in Efren's face. There was no way to win. Efrén yawned himself fully awake before turning towards his parents' side of the room. Once again, Appa was gone. No sign of his heavy jacket or scuffed up work boots by the front of the door either. It seemed no matter how early Efrén tried getting up, he just couldn't catch Appa getting ready for work. Amma was the same way and never slept in. Any minute now, she'd wake up, unwrap her blankets, and go right to the kitchen to make breakfast. There was a pot full of leftover frijoles from last night's dinner, and that meant she would for sure be making fresh sopes, Efrén's favorite. But before that, Efrén had something important to do. He lifted Max's leg by the pajamas and got up, careful not to disturb Mia, who'd now snuggled close to Max. Efrén stepped over the pair of pint-sized legs and arms blocking his path. He wasn't sure which was worse, sharing a mattress with 2 kindergartners or sharing the bathroom. The apartment was really one big room, so the only place he could find peace and quiet was the bathroom. Efrén looked in the mirror, wincing as he removed the tiny strips of tape, pinning back his ears against the sides of his head. An idea he came up with after repeatedly hearing Ama warn the little ones against making funny faces. Sus caras se les van a quedar así, she'd say. Their faces freezing. That's exactly what Efrén counted on. It was only a theory, but if it were even slightly true, he guessed the same would apply to his ears. If he could manage to tape back his ears often enough, they too would eventually freeze and stop sticking out. All he had to do was make sure that they folded in just the right way for a few more weeks, and presto, normal ears that didn't stick out like the knobs of Frankenstein's neck. After taking care of business, Efrén climbed inside the empty bathtub with the library copy of There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom by one of his favorite authors, Louis Asher, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. Efrén loved reading books. Even when he'd read them before, it was like visiting an old friend. The main character, Bradley Chalkers, was the best. And it wasn't just that I'm sorry, my glasses are starting to act up a little bit on me. And it wasn't just that he had a really sweet side to him that his classmates didn't get to see. Nope, the boy was super tough. No matter how rough things got for him, he continued to show up and fight, like Efrén's best friend, David, another misunderstood kid. I was thinking of stopping there. Is that good, or Jason?
There are no rules. Yeah, you're still okay if you want to read just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to read a little bit.
You guys are awake, or?
Yeah. No, it's good. I want it. I really tried to program with the widest variety of genres here, and it's really good to have your voice too. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll keep going a little bit more then, or do you guys want me to jump cut a little bit? I had another little spot here.
Go ahead and jump.
Jump cut. All right. All right. Efrén sprinted home right after school, stopping only when he reached the bottom steps to his apartment. Gasping for breath, he eyed the closed blinds of his living room window. His initial thought was that Ama was not home, but he wasn't ready to accept defeat, not just yet. After all, it was completely possible that she was just tired from the difficult trip and decided to take a nap. Efrén climbed the stairs, removed the key safely pinned onto the inside of his shirt collar. He unlocked both the metal screen and front door. Once inside, he searched each section of the room. The sheets over the mattresses lay unfolded, just as he'd left them this morning. The only other left to check was the bathroom, which he immediately headed to. He knocked and pushed the door open. Nothing. He rushed into the kitchen area and searched the countertops for signs of his mother's cooking, perhaps the scent of salsa roasting on the colmar griddle. But all he smelled was the stale scent of dread now filling the room. Efrén rushed outside, where Doña Chana immediately waved him over. Oh, hi. I thought you were in LA. I was, but gracias a Dios, I came back early. Gracias a Dios? Something was definitely wrong. Efrén's stomach nodded as he entered Doña Chana's apartment. The twin sat at the couch watching a cartoon on her cell phone. This time, only Mia ran up to meet him. He boosted her up and gave her a long, sturdy hug. Though Mia couldn't understand the real reason behind it, she didn't mind at all. Mia planted her chin over his shoulder, a perfect fit. When is Ama coming back? She asked. Efrén gazed up at Doña Chana, who looked on the verge of tears. She would stay that way for the rest of the evening, barely speaking a word. So that's when he's expecting to find Ama at the house, and she's not there. So
Thank you so much.
you.
I know it must be really hard. Your book just came out kind of in the middle of this. How have you been? How has that experience been for you? And have you been able to connect with readers at all? It must be so hard right now.
You know what? I don't know. I feel very disconnected, to be honest. We had plans to go back to my old high school, Santa High School, and we had 1,400 kids waiting to attend the book launch. A couple of schools from the neighborhood, and that obviously got canceled. So I had to go on YouTube and do my book launch that way. People have been very supportive. I get tons of little emails, people telling me, teachers, oh my God, so many teachers telling me stories about kids in their classrooms who are going through the same thing. I wish I could post them, but I can't because, safety reasons. It's been different. It's not what I expected. A lot of my friends were all in the same boat. And so we're just being as positive as we can. My publishers have been very supportive. I did not meet my second book isn't finished yet. Like some of you guys mentioned, it's kind of tough to write right now. For the first time, I feel like when I'm at school, I've always given 110% when I'm the teacher. And then I come home and I'm a parent, and then I become an author. And right now, everything's kind of meshed together. So in the middle of the day, I'll get emails from students. Right now, I just saw that there was 2 messages from 2 of my students about the homework. So all day long, I'm a teacher. All day long, I'm a parent. And all day long, I'm an author. And it's really hard to shift gears and to figure out what I'm doing. And so it's a little challenging right now.
Well, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And everyone should check out Efrén. And and I think that's it. Our other reader hasn't shown up in the waiting room. I'm just going to read one little note. This is from the Raven Poetry Anthology. This is 1935, and this is their letter to their readers. And it says, Dear reader, the Raven Anthology ends its second eventful year, and we thank you publicly for the encouragement and support that helped keep us in print. If any horse-faced Philistine should ever ask what is done to justify its appearance and continue to stay on earth, snap back at him with a reply that has brought to light great poetic treasures which had lain too long hidden in the garrets of the village. And he ends the note by saying, but that's enough. A new year, and we hope for a still better year, is beckoning. Cheerio. And that's all I can wish, is that we brought some voices out that have not been able to speak yet, and I hope a better year beckons. And they were thinking that in 1935, and I think we're all thinking that here right now in 2020. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. Please encourage other people to sign up. I hope we could do this again. Thank you. And
thank you, everyone.
Have a great night. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to meet you,
everybody.
Awesome, wonderful, totally wonderful.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.